All right, Donald Lee, Charlie Parker. Also inspired by Jaco Pastorius' debut album from 1976. I think probably every bass player either has played that or played that head or is working on it or wants to work on it. That was the first head that I learned, if you can believe that. My first bass teacher was an animal, and instead of learning something simple like Settendahl or a blues head, we jumped right into Donald Lee. And now I appreciate it. There's a method to my madness. I'm not just performing random pieces at the top of these. I'm playing excerpts from my upcoming recital. I'm going to do Donald Lee. But you might hear some random stuff too. This is Bass Case 027, Counting, Part 1. Counting. I'm going to rip off Gordon Gekko, Michael Douglas from Wall Street, instead of substitute counting for greed. Counting is good. Counting is right. Counting works. And counting cuts through, clarifies, and captures the essence of playing music. And I'm talking about all instruments, including vocalists. If you're not counting, you're asking for it. You're asking to get lost in the changes. You're asking to enter at the wrong time after some serious amount of multi-measure rest, or just two. And if you're not counting, you're looking to count the tune in at the wrong tempo, because the tempo of the tune is the one that's playing in your head. And if you count something else, you might play a different tempo. So who knows? Counting isn't a concept that comes and goes and you go with it. It's around all the time. And counting is something that you have to train yourself to do, like reading music or learning changes or working on your arco playing or handling the bow. It does not come naturally as much as you like to think it does. And then sure, I know that you can count sometimes really well. But can you count through the entire form of a blues head and count correctly? Try it. Try it just with a recording, or try it while you're walking changes. And if you haven't trained yourself to count it, if it's not built into the system, your system, you're going to drop something. I'm going to steal another movie line from Glenn Ross with Pacino and Jack Lemmon. And Alec Baldwin, he has this one scene that's not in the play, but it's in the movie, and he's Blake, and he gives it to the sales team that make up the core of the cast of this film, which is about guys selling marshland in Florida as prime real estate. And he says, ABC, always be closing. But I'm going to change it to always be counting, ABC. I'm going to digress for a minute. Films are important. John Cage, you can look this up online, and I'll try to post it at some point. John Cage has a list of instructions from music students and teachers, and one of his hints was look at movies carefully and often, and films are important. But as important as films are, counting is even more important. You're not beyond counting. No player is. I've run into a lot of my students that think counting is beyond them, and it's not. I remember telling one student about 10, 15 years ago that there's no shame in counting. Play some of Monk's heads and tell me that counting isn't important. The turnaround sections, the last four bars of Straight No Chaser or Blue Monk, they're straight up blues, right? Kind of. I need to count it. I've been playing those heads for a while. What tempos do you need to count at? All of them. Slow ones. like a ballad. Man, you need to be counting that. We've talked about this before. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2E, and 3E, and 4. Medium tempos. Those things will 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and you get the point. Your walking changes, count. Do it now. It'll build into your system, and you'll be counting, and you won't realize what you're counting. Or do this at home. There'll be a piece of music playing, and all of a sudden, without realizing it, I'll say 1. I'm counting myself into the 1 subconsciously, and boom, I want to land on the 1. It's built in like that. You want to do that. Bright tempos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But it's difficult with bright tempos. You want to count 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So I'm counting in half notes. Tap your foot on the 1 and 3 at a bright tempo. And Lynn Seaton taught me that. And he said, I think that Herb Ellis said that to him, to tap your foot on the 1 and 3 at fast tempos, even at medium tempos. It has something to do with the fact that the hi-hat, tap, 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 so if you're tapping on the 1 and 3 and counting, you'll be lined up with the music right. Count to music. Put on your recordings and count with them. It's some of the best, I'm going to do a podcast. I've got to remind myself, I've got a list of them. I've got to put this on there, the practicing that you can do without your instrument. And this is the stuff that really makes you a better musician. And part of it is, and one of them is counting. You just put the metronome on, or like I just said, put on a recording, maybe something you're dealing with, maybe not, and just count through it. Count all the time. Constantly. Try to find the 1 as quickly as possible. Put a recording on and starting it in the middle, right? That's easy to do now. Just send the line into the middle and try to find the 1 of the next measure as quickly as you can. It's a good training technique. But with all that training, it's got to be entered into your system. And to get it into your system, you've got to count all the time. Now think about it. You think, oh, well, as a bass player, I'm kind of counting walking quarter notes, right? Well, still count them. Because sometimes you're going to not play quarter notes. You're going to play boom, doom, dika, doom, 1, 2, triplet, 4. And you want to count and make sure that that triplet lines up right. We have a tendency sometimes to play that 8th note triplet drop a little too fast, right? To rush it. 1, 2, triplet-do, 1, 2, triplet-do, 1, 2, triplet-do, boom-ba-do, dika-da-do, dika-da-dika-da-dika-da-dika-da-dika-da. And to get that into your system without the instrument and then later with the instrument, it pays off. You will not be sorry that you do this. We were in rehearsal the other night, somebody wasn't counting, and entrances were all over the place. And you'll be glad you did it, because when you get into a non-comfortable tempo, you'll be glad you've been working on your counting. And non-comfortable tempos are slow ones too. Those are ones that really will bully you. Someone counts something off at 50, that you're going to want to rush it. So counting and subdividing 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, 3E, and 4, and 1. And doing that with that tapping your foot on 1 and 3 will save you. Someone calls something in an odd meter. A friend of mine, he likes to play Summertime, but in 5/4. I got to think about that and work it out at home. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. I think about it in a grouping of 3 and 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, when I'm walking that line, right? because we're not used to, we're built into four. I think I talked about this on a previous episode. All the rock music and commercial music and movie music and music that you've heard everywhere is typically in four, and we've built into that way. So playing into five, you think, well, I'll just add an extra beat. It's not that easy. You're going to have to count through it, and counting through that will save you. Practice that. Do it with the metronome, and then do it without the metronome where you're counting, and you'll be glad you did it. So get that worked out. I'll talk to you next time.